All right, today we're diving into one of the most famous books on the planet, but probably not in the way you're used to. Forget theology for a second. We're going to peel back the layers to find a world of maps, money, and commerce that's been hiding in plain sight this whole time. For most of us, this book is all about faith, morality, and these epic spiritual dramas. It's the foundation for belief systems that have literally shaped the world we live in. But what if, while everyone was arguing over interpretation and theology, we missed the point? What if, underneath all the parables, there's a super detailed record of the ancient world? Its geography, its economy, its legal systems. What if the practical, real world these stories came from got lost in the shuffle? So, let's go right back to the beginning, the story of creation. We usually think of it as this poetic myth, right? But it turns out it contains some surprisingly concrete details that seem to map out a very real place. Yeah, we all know this one. A beautiful paradise, the first man and woman, that infamous tree. It's a foundational story, and we usually look at it for its moral lessons. But let's look closer at how this place is actually described. And this is where it gets wild. The text doesn't just say, all river, it names 4 of them. It doesn't just say, some land over there, it points to specific regions we know. Havilah, Ethiopia, Assyria. And then, get this, it even lists their valuable natural resources. This reads less like a myth and more like an ancient trade map. And this detail is just fascinating. The text doesn't just mention gold, it gives it a quality review. The gold of that land is good. It then lists other high-value trade goods like bdellium, which is this aromatic resin, and precious onyx stone. This isn't just fluffy description, it's an economic report on a region rich in commercial value. Okay, so let's jump forward a bit and see how this theme of real-world, practical stuff continues with some of the biggest names in the book. It turns out they weren't just spiritual leaders, they were also really savvy operators in a complex world. When you think of a guy like Abraham, you probably think of these incredible moments of faith, right? Like this one here, the almost sacrifice of his son Isaac. These are the stories that define his spiritual legacy. But the very same book shows us a totally different side of Abraham, a guy who had to deal with the real-world problems of property, business, and, well, cold, hard cash. Okay, here's a perfect example from Genesis 23. After his wife Sarah dies, Abraham needs to buy a place to bury her. He doesn't just get it as a gift, nope. He enters into a formal business negotiation with the local landowners, and the conversation gets right down to a specific price. And here's the key. It's not some silver, it's exactly 400 shekels. The text even says that Abraham weighed out the silver and describes it as current money with the merchant. That is the language of international trade. The story carefully records the whole deal, the offer, the price, the payment, and the legal transfer of the deed. This puts Abraham right in the middle of a world with contracts, currency, and established business practices. A world of commerce we just don't hear about in Sunday school. So we've seen geography and commerce. But the text also lays out a foundational structure for how society should even function, the rhythm of time itself. It sets up a weekly cycle that has shaped the whole world, even if many of us have forgotten how it originally worked. The idea of a day of rest, the Sabbath, is introduced right there in the creation story. It's not an afterthought, it's presented as part of the fabric of the universe, woven in from day one. This verse right here is the origin point. After 6 days of work, the 7th day is set apart. It's not just a day off, it's called blessed and sanctified. The text is crystal clear. The cycle ends with rest on the 7th day. And this is where it gets really interesting. The original text couldn't be clearer. This 7th day, which we call Saturday, is the day of rest. But somewhere along the line, many traditions shifted their main day of worship to Sunday, the first day of the week. When you read the source text, you see this original rhythm that, frankly, millions of people are now completely out of sync with. It just goes to show how original meanings can get lost over time. So when you put all these pieces together, what do you get? You start to see a text that's way more grounded in the physical, commercial, and practical world than we ever imagined. So if you just step back from all the centuries of debate for a second and just read what's actually on the page, these amazing layers just pop out. You've got a map pointing to real-world resources, a ledger book detailing business deals, a calendar that sets up the original week. Seeing all this doesn't take away from the spiritual side. It makes it richer. It grounds these stories in a real, functioning, global community. A community that honestly feels like it's been totally forgotten, maybe even ignored, in all the focus on pure theology. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If huge details about geography, trade, and even the basic calendar have been sitting there this whole time, just kind of overlooked, what else is waiting in there? What other worlds are hidden just beneath the surface of stories we think we know so well?